$65,000. That's what she asked for. She got $63,500. Her colleague asked for $85,000. He got $79,000. Same role, same experience, same company. The only difference? The first number. The $200 jacket next to the $80 jacket isn't there to sell. It's there to make $80 feel reasonable. The asking price on the house you walked through last weekend, it already decided what you were willing to pay before you saw a single room. This is called anchoring bias, and the first number in any situation has already decided where you'll end up before you've had a single thought about it. Here's the core problem. Your brain doesn't evaluate numbers. It evaluates relationships between numbers. When you encounter a figure, a price, a salary, a sentence, your brain doesn't ask, is this fair? Is this accurate? Is this right? It asks one question. Is this more or less than the last number I saw? That's it. That's the entire calculation. And whoever controls the first number controls the reference point, controls the outcome. Think about what that means in salary negotiation. If a job posting says $60,000 to $80,000, you're already anchored. Even if your market research says $95,000, even if your experience justifies $100,000, the moment you saw that range, your ceiling moved, and you didn't notice. Now think about retail. The original price crossed out on the tag wasn't a real price. It was never meant to be sold at. It was placed there for one reason, to make the sale price feel earned. Was $299, now $149. Your brain doesn't think, is $149 fair? It thinks, I'm saving $150. Two completely different questions, with two completely different emotional outcomes. And only one of them is real. But it gets more serious than retail. In 2006, researchers presented experienced criminal judges with a case file. The judges read the same evidence, the same background, the same crime. Before deciding on a sentence, they were asked to roll a pair of dice. The dice were rigged, landing on either 3 or 9. The judges who rolled 9 recommended sentences significantly longer than the judges who rolled 3. They knew the dice were irrelevant. It didn't matter. The anchor doesn't need to be logical. It doesn't need to be relevant. It doesn't need to be real. It just needs to arrive first. And then the science explains exactly why your brain has no choice but to follow it. 1974. Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, the same researchers whose work would eventually earn a Nobel Prize, published a study in Science Journal that would define how we understand human judgment for the next 50 years. Their experiment was simple, almost absurdly so. They asked participants to spin a wheel of fortune, rigged to stop at either 10 or 65. Then they asked a completely unrelated question. What percentage of African countries are members of the United Nations? People who spun 10 estimated 25% on average. People who spun 65 estimated 45% on average. A 20-point difference from a number on a spinning wheel that had nothing to do with the question. Tversky and Kahneman called the mechanism anchoring and adjustment. Your brain uses the first number as a starting point and adjusts from there. The problem isn't the adjustment. The problem is that the adjustment always stops too soon. People stop adjusting when they reach the first number that feels plausible, not the number that's accurate, the number that feels okay. And feels okay is always closer to the anchor than the truth. But knowing the anchor is arbitrary doesn't protect you. That's what the second study proved. In 2006, English, Thomas Mussweiler, and Fritz Strack at the University of Würzburg recruited experienced criminal judges, professionals trained specifically to evaluate evidence objectively. Each judge read the same case file, same crime, same defendant, same evidence. Before sentencing, they were asked to roll a pair of dice. The dice were loaded. They always landed on 3 or 9. The judges who rolled 9 recommended sentences averaging 8 months longer than those who rolled 3. These were experienced judges. They were told the dice were random. They knew the numbers were meaningless. It didn't matter. Why? Because of a second mechanism Englich and Mussweiler identified called selective accessibility. When an anchor is introduced, even a random, irrelevant one, your brain immediately begins searching for information consistent with that anchor. The judges who rolled 9 didn't consciously think the defendant deserved more time. Their brains simply surfaced more evidence that supported a longer sentence, because 9 made longer feel accessible. The anchor didn't change the facts. It changed which facts the brain noticed. The third mechanism explains why this is especially dangerous in high-stakes decisions. In 2001, Adam Galinsky and Thomas Mussweiler at Northwestern University analyzed hundreds of real negotiations across salary, real estate, and business deals. Their finding was precise. The single strongest predictor of the final settlement price was not experience, not the quality of the arguments, not how long the negotiation lasted. It was the first offer. Whoever put a number on the table first defined the range of reasonable for both sides. Even the person making the counteroffer adjusted from the original anchor, instead of from their own independent assessment. The anchor didn't just influence the outcome. It constructed the entire playing field. 3 mechanisms. Anchoring and adjustment. Your brain uses the first number as home base and never travels far enough from it. Selective accessibility. The anchor filters which evidence your brain decides to notice. First offer dominance. Whoever anchors first defines what reasonable means for everyone in the room. Now here's what you can actually do about it. Three mechanisms, 3 countermeasures. And here's what makes this bias different from every other one in the series. You don't just defend against the anchor. You can use it. Countermeasure 1. Consider the opposite. Against anchoring and adjustment, Tversky and Kahneman. In 2000, Mussweiler, Strack, and Pfeiffer published a direct countermeasure to the anchoring effect in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin. Their finding: when people were instructed to actively consider why the anchor might be wrong, anchoring effect dropped significantly. Not eliminated, significantly reduced. The mechanism? Anchoring and adjustment fails when you force your brain to search for disconfirming information instead of confirming it. You break the selective accessibility loop before it starts. Here's what it looks like in practice. Before any salary negotiation, don't just research the market range. Ask, why might this range be wrong for me specifically? Then answer that question with 3 data points: your output, your impact, your trajectory. Before buying a house, before you look at the asking price, write down what you think it's worth. That number becomes your competing anchor, and it protects you from theirs. Countermeasure 2. Anchor first, anchor high. Against selective accessibility, English et al., plus first offer dominance, Galinsky and Mussweiler. Galinsky and Mussweiler didn't just identify the problem, they identified the solution. If the first number always wins, make sure the first number is yours. Their 2001 research showed that people who made the first offer in negotiations achieved significantly better outcomes, consistently and measurably, than those who waited. Not because they were better negotiators, because they set the field. The formula is precise. Anchor 15 to 20% above your actual target. Not aggressive enough to destroy credibility. High enough to pull the final number toward your range, not theirs. In a salary negotiation, if your target is $90,000, your opening anchor is $105,000. The other side will counter, you will adjust, and you will still land higher than if you had waited for them to go first. This is an aggression. This is science. Countermeasure 3. Pre-commit to your number. Against first offer dominance, Galinsky and Mussweiler. The anchor loses power when you already have one. Research in behavioral decision theory shows that anchoring effect weakens significantly when decision makers have an independent reference point established before exposure to the external anchor. Your internal anchor competes with their external one, and it wins if it was there first. The practice. Before you walk into any negotiation, before you see any price tag, before you open any listing, write down your number. What would you pay? What is this worth to you? What would you accept? Commit to it in writing. Not as a ceiling, as a reference point. When their anchor arrives, and it will, you already have yours. In a car purchase, before you step into the showroom, research the true market value and write the maximum you'll pay. In any business negotiation, write your walkaway number before the first call begins. Pre-commitment doesn't make you rigid. It makes you resistant. 3 countermeasures. Consider the opposite to break the selective accessibility loop before it can filter your thinking. Anchor first, anchor high, to set the playing field instead of playing on someone else's. Pre-commit to your number to arrive at every negotiation with an anchor already in place. The anchor doesn't disappear when you know about it, but when you know how it works, you get to decide whose anchor you're using. Here's the reframe. Every number you've ever negotiated, every price you've ever paid, every sentence a judge has ever handed down was shaped by a number that arrived before the conversation started. You were never negotiating the number. You were negotiating around someone else's anchor. That changes now, not because the bias disappears, because you now know the one thing that makes anchoring work. It needs to arrive before you're ready. So be ready. Tell me in the comments, what's the next negotiation you have coming up? A salary, a car, a house, anything. And what's the first number you're planning to put on the table? Write it out. Let's pressure test it together. If this series is changing how you see the decisions you make, subscribe. because next video, we're looking at the bias that makes every project take twice as long as you planned, even when you knew about this bias going in. The planning fallacy. I'll see you then.